Got a Bitcoin alert. The crypto breaking above $60,000 for the first time since April. The move comes as the SEC.
But Bitcoin by itself simply cannot scale to be the monetary system for the world at base layer. But with a second layer, this is possible depending upon how that second layer is implemented. But on balance, I support Bitcoin, and I'm not an investor. The only publicly traded stock I own is Tesla. So all I did was I said, look, we're going to suspend Bitcoin transactions for now. We're not selling any Bitcoin, nor am I selling anything personally, nor is SpaceX selling any Bitcoin.
It all comes back to that fundamental concept that surveillance has become easier. The barriers to performing surveillance at scale have with the advance in technology.
So that's something that it's not got the visibility of Bitcoin, but the move towards digital money that we're very engaged in is a super positive thing that eventually will get to even the poorest countries.
And you have the ACH system, which is ancient and still in operation, which is allows transfers effectively like a check would be an ACH transfer, but it's not secure. And you've got the credit card systems, which are also not secure. It would be like handing your username and password to a stranger in a restaurant if you buy a meal. There's definitely an opportunity for something that is better from an information theory standpoint. And there you can think of it like data on a network, I think, is the way to view it. What has the most throughput, what has the least error, what drops the fewest packets, fraud, for example, being a source of error, and government interference in currencies being a source of error. But it's fundamentally an information system. So I think it makes sense to support something that improves the quality of information with which we conduct the economy. And Bitcoin is a candidate for that. I think some things, and it's obviously it's evolving, and there are additional things like Lightning being done on top of Bitcoin. But Bitcoin per se is mostly solving for scarcity, or rather solving for essentially having no throat to choke, decentralized. So there's no one who can be coerced in any way to empty their Bitcoin account. Well, I guess they could technically, but on an individual basis, but the system as a whole cannot. And it has an open ledger, which is also quite good. But transaction volume is low, transaction cost is high, and usability for the average person is not yet very good. But it has a lot of potential. I've been thinking about money for a long time. I think it's best to think of money as an information system, primarily an information system for labor allocation. For practical purposes, it exists in a series of heterogeneous databases, very different databases in bank mainframes around the world. It moves quite slowly in reality. It may seem to move fast sometimes, and it does with PayPal, which is real time. But the vast majority of the systems out there are batch processing. So the actual reconciliation may take 1 to 5 business days, sometimes longer.
Tesla could potentially make more money from its Bitcoin investment this year than profits from electric cars in all of 2020. What's your take on that? What's your Bitcoin take and the fact that the price can just go up or down based on a simple tweet from him?
Well, look, Elon has tons of money and he's very sophisticated. So, I don't worry that, his Bitcoin will sort of randomly go up or down. I do think people get bought into these manias who may not have as much money to spare. So I'm not bullish on Bitcoin, and my general thought would be that if you have less money than Elon, you should probably watch out.
Why aren't you bullish on Bitcoin?
Look, there are things we invest in society that produce output. Bitcoin happens to use a lot of energy. It happens to promote anonymous transactions. They're not reversible transactions. The Gates Foundation does a lot in terms of digital currency, but those are things where you can see who's making the transaction. So digital money is a good thing. There's a different approach that's local currency and attributed and, deals with all the money laundering and terrorism type regulations, and yet gives you the the convenience and the low cost of transaction. And so, our foundation is very proud that in the pandemic, a lot of the countries we funded to do this were able to get money out to their citizens very, very efficiently. So that's something that it's not got the visibility of Bitcoin, but the move towards digital money that we're very engaged in is a super positive thing that eventually will get to even the poorest countries.
But Bitcoin by itself simply cannot scale to be the monetary system for the world at base layer. But with a second layer, this is possible depending upon how that second layer is implemented. But on balance, I support Bitcoin, and I'm not an investor. The only publicly traded stock I own is Tesla, and the only significant thing I own outside of Tesla is my SpaceX stock. Help create both companies. So, but apart from that, I do own Bitcoin, and Tesla owns Bitcoin, SpaceX owns Bitcoin, and then I do personally own a bit of Ethereum and Dogecoin, of course. So all I did was I said, look, we're going to suspend Bitcoin transactions for now. We're not selling any Bitcoin, nor am I selling anything personally, nor is SpaceX selling any Bitcoin. Again, I want to emphasize SpaceX, Tesla, and I own Bitcoin. I also own a little bit of Ethereum and Doge, but the companies just own Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin that I own is worth much more than the Ethereum or Doge. So clearly, if these actions negatively affect me financially, if I was purely financially motivated, then I would not express this reticence about Bitcoin energy usage.
It all comes back to that fundamental concept that surveillance has become easier. The barriers to performing surveillance at scale have with the advance in technology. We actually still believe things like the idea that cash is anonymous, and that's no longer actually true. Fun little exercise for anybody at home who's doing this. Those cash counters that you see at like the bank, they can put like a stack of money in, it's like, and it pulls it through and it says, these are, of these bills, or these are 30 of these bills, or whatever. Like, you can sort it into all kinds of things if you make a deposit, if you ever actually go into a bank anymore, which in a lot of you don't. But maybe, you're a drug dealer, go buy your own cash counter. Those cash counters now, they actually scan the serial number of every bill. And they keep a database of every serial number of every bill that they scan, even when they're going by, like, 130 seconds. And guess what those cash counters are now? Yeah, they're networked, right? And so this is the thing. The same thing is happening to our postal mail. The USPS in the United States, they photograph addressing information for every piece of mail now they process. And these are just the challenges that we face, right? They see it as metadata. Like, maybe they don't know what you spent that money on, but they know that cash was deposited by this person at this bank, eventually, this business. And the last time that the system writ large saw this bill was over in this state or that, and it was withdrawn by this person at that time. And we have no idea how the federal government is using these programs. We have no idea how the banks are using these programs to perform sort of surveillance and link analysis of how sort of financial flows occur. But then, as you say, then we get cryptocurrency. Now, cryptocurrency, and by this I'm just going to say Bitcoin, is really failing comprehensively, terribly on the privacy angle. And I've said this again, and people are like, oh, Taproot, look at what Taproot actually does. Taproot does not fix Bitcoin's privacy problem. And there's some arguments that it makes it worse by just sort of fragmenting the address space, making a forensic sort of flow analysis easier, because this kind of wallet is using an ancient address. They sent a payment to this new person with a new form of address, right? But the change address went back to the old one. So even though there's one input, two outputs, you can tell one was a payment and one was a sort of a refund or change event. Shouldn't be like that. There's no reason for it to happen. We see so many different privacy coins. Zcash, I have said repeatedly, really does the best in this space with their shielded transactions. The criticism is that these system transactions don't occur by default, which is valid. In my opinion, they should happen by default. The way that you fix this, the way that you normalize this, is you make Bitcoin private, right? I mean, the main chain. I'm not talking about putting a layer 2. I'm not saying lightning shenanigans. right? You have to make the idea cryptocurrency is private by design. And once you normalize that, it's fait accompli.